everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, we will be talking about a very active fall pattern that will be setting up across the good portion of the United States and into portions of southwestern Canada, especially with regards to a potential heat wave. But that's not going to be the main story for everyone. There's going to be bouts of cool and warmth out ahead of large storms. In general, a very active fall pattern with potentially first frosts in some areas also occurring, and maybe even some early snow, as I mentioned in yesterday's video. Even though this video is going to be about the long range outlook, I want to briefly talk about what's going to be going on in the shorter term for the next 2 to 3 minutes. So what we have, really the main story across the United States in this next week is going to be cooler than average temperatures across pretty much anywhere east of the Front Range of the Rockies. You could see that, and you could probably feel it already outside in many areas. I mean, I know in my area it's really cooled off. It is in the 70s, and it is a marked transition from what it has been. And do note that this continues spreading. The anomalies especially increase across the southern United States, where we have cloud cover. The eastern United States, eastern seaboard gets more in on it by Tuesday. But also across the southwest, the other story will be monsoons, which will be bringing quite a bit of additional precipitation. And you can see that these storms and showers are going to be firing up mainly across Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico. And these will continue for a while, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They eventually do subside, and we see the pattern break as that cool off across the eastern United States moves away. And with that, the precipitation is finally able to center itself further east. And with that, it allows for larger systems potentially to develop across the central portions of the United States, which we haven't been seeing thus far, as again, this cool off has kept all the precipitation to the south and west, and the monsoons, for that reason, were able to take off and flourish. So I'm going to focus on the precipitation side of things for now in the long range, and then I will show you what the temperatures look like. I believe that the precipitation side is a little bit more interesting at this point, but the temperatures definitely have their own story to tell, as there will be extremely hot temperatures across a good portion of southwestern Canada, a potential large heat wave developing, and it might be not only extreme in its anomalies, but also extreme in a sense that it will be hanging around for a good while. So that is definitely something I want to update you guys on. But in the meantime, so notice at this point, this is next weekend. So the cool off, you can see the remnant of it. The high pressure is moving away further eastward across eastern Canada, and the cool air along with it. It won't immediately heat back up across the eastern United States. As you can see, the cool air maintains itself, especially in areas where there is cloud cover. It will really still feel really cool. But again, at this point, it's not as much of a cool air mass, just as much as chilly because of the cloud cover and potential rain. So by September 1st, so Monday, this is the first day of September, notice that we have a potential storm setting up across the central United States. This isn't, I would say, a massive one. It's not powerful. It doesn't even have an associated low pressure with it, but it's just spinning around with a lot of precipitation across the central United States for a few days. Now, the models are going back and forth on this, and what I will do right now is click through the different model runs. So this is what the 6 a.m. model run of today showed at this time. You could see showed precipitation, but in a different placement. This is what the noon model run showed, and this is now what the evening model run shows. And you can see that they are a little all over the place, but the message remains the same, that they all show activity in the long range. So I'm not going to focus too much on one individual storm. If you recall, yesterday there was a chance that there could be some sort of a northwestern stronger system, and it seems at this current point the models have kind of backed off of that. That doesn't mean that they can't recontinue that, say, tomorrow, and they probably will, because we've seen that storm across the northwest go through phases of showing, not showing, showing. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But in the meantime, you can see precipitation increases across the eastern United States, and we see potentially some even tropical activity across the southwest there. And with these troughs that we get at this time of the year that are getting stronger and stronger, you can see that these fronts and these high pressures driving these precipitation events really interact with a lot of the southern moisture and create potentially larger storms that we haven't seen thus far. We had that one large storm this past weekend where the impacts weren't felt that much across the eastern United States with the precipitation side of things, more of the temperature. It brought that cool down. But this one, for example, showing up here in long range, is a system that brings quite a bit of heavy rain with it, and will definitely bring a lot of impacts in terms of the precipitation side. And I want to show you that each model run has been consistent with this. So this is the one at noon, and you can see some sort of tropical activity, more activity, showers, storms. So it seems that it's going to be pretty wet east of the Rockies. And again, so the monsoons right now across the southwest, some activity across the northwest, and just a very, very active pattern it seems to be setting up. So we talked about the precipitation side of things. I will continue using the GFS model to talk about the temperature side of things. I'm using the GFS because I believe the GFS has a better handle. It has a better handle on, say, the cool down that we just had or the monsoons that we had across the southwest. So I'll show you the European, but again, I prefer the GFS as of right now, and it's a trend that's been going on for quite a while. This year in general, I think the GFS has been just doing a lot better. Notice, this is the cool-off we have going on right now. Again, the GFS predicted this very far out and very well. It was very consistent with it. As I mentioned, this cool-off will turn into more of a cool air mass that is sustained by cloud cover as opposed to an air mass that came from Canada as you get further and further along this week. But also what's interesting and very concerning is that we see potentially extremely above average temperatures across British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, especially Saskatchewan. There, Manitoba a little less, but it will possibly move into all of these areas and even the northwestern United States as we get into next weekend. So this has also been something that the models have been hinting at consistently and with a really, really strong degree of again, anomalous readings. So look, as I put this forward, while the eastern United States, again, because of all the activity and all the precipitation that will be going on, but by the time we get into next weekend, we see really, really hot temperatures across Alberta, British Columbia, Manitoba. Now, you may be wondering, okay, so what are these actual temperature readings look like? And to someone that lives in the south, 80s, upper 80s, this might not seem like anything significant. But, for those folks up here, look, they will be seeing temperatures that are warmer than Florida. They will be potentially seeing temperatures that are as hot as Texas, way in Alberta and Saskatchewan. And you could see that while the rest of the eastern United States will be not baking, they will be chilling in the 60s. So we are dealing with a really, really strong flip. And my biggest concern is that could just set up for a really bad wildfire season across these areas. They are pretty heavily forested, especially British Columbia and Alberta, less so in these prairie states. And the wildfires there have been pretty bad in recent years, and that may not help if we have all of this heat there. Now again, a lot of this heat won't really make its way any further south, and that's because of this constant activity, constant little storms that we have across the eastern United States, and we basically set up into a blocking pattern. Notice that across the northwest, this impacts Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, but peaking across some of these areas. I mean, they are literally, some of these temperature readings coming off the chart in terms of the anomaly. It doesn't go further than this because of how extreme this is. So again, while this doesn't look crazy in terms of the actual Fahrenheit reading because it's the mid to upper 80s, these people usually see temperature readings in the 50s or 40s this time of the year, not upper 80s. This would be the equivalent of the Midwest seeing hundreds and the South seeing temperatures 100, 115 degrees. So the averages are, that's why they're important, because they give us a perspective. I mean, look at this, what the GFS shows. This is absolutely incredible. It potentially spreads this across all of southern Canada, so a potentially very concerning and very disruptive pattern that we'll be setting up across these areas. I did say that I predicted that I think there would be a warm fall, but it seems that right now the models are favoring that this warmth may be further north than what I thought. I thought it would be kind of setting up across the U.S., while we clearly have these cooler temperatures favoring the central and eastern United States. And you can see that the eastern United States continues to get these breaks, and almost cold, right? But Canada, just very, very hot, along with the northwestern United States. So not good. And yes, in case you've been wondering, the models have been consistent with this. Now, obviously, the exact placement and degree has been varying, but look, hot, right? This is a very warm pattern from the 6 o'clock model pattern, or 6 o'clock model run. And note that some of these model runs bring in some cooler air, or at least relief, but the northwest seemingly is the area that gets hit the most by this disproportionately. And it seems to be the outlier, the ones that show more of that cool air. Look at this model run, for example, from today at noon. It shows more of that heat, almost identically to the more recent model run. I've been showing you the GFS model with regards to the temperature and precipitation forecasts. I want to show you now the European model with regards to the temperatures, just to show you that especially the heat wave across Canada and the northwest and the cool air across the eastern and central United States is consistent with not just the GFS amongst its model runs, but also the European model run. So notice, this is the European right now. We have that cool off across the eastern United States, the northwest potentially dealing with quite a bit of warmth. And then yesterday I made a video where I talked about there could be a little brief opportunity here between these heat ups and this cool off that's dwindling across the eastern United States as we get towards late August, where there could be potentially a system that shifts into the northwest and brings some potentially early cold, early snow, but it seems unfortunately the models have backed off of that and have replaced it with more continuous heat, which is why yesterday's video was titled The Long Range Outlook, and I told you to not take that necessarily with any more than just a grain of salt. And it seems like the day later it has flipped, and now it shows continuous heat as we get into the 2nd of September, the 3rd, the 4th, and you can see those anomalies grow again across very similar areas: British Columbia, Alberta. The European does show a little bit more cool air across further west. Again, the GFS centered it more towards the south and east. The European shows a little pockets of warm sneaking in here and a little further west with that cool air, so this would be a little better of a scenario. But as we put this further out into September, notice it shows that heat really expanding across those areas, and again, the anomalies are absolutely incredible with this. And yeah, cool across the eastern United States, so that will be bringing quite chilly temperatures, and it may not even seem like it's a, someone across the northwestern United States may be like, this has been one of the warmest falls, while someone a few states over in Iowa or Illinois will be like, this has been one of the chilliest falls, because right now if this pattern continues, that's what we're looking at. So now I want to take us away from the weather models, and I want to show you the Climate Prediction Center 6 to 10 day temperature outlook and precipitation outlook. Notice that this extends from August 30th through the 3rd, and kind of in line with what the models are showing, right? Above average temperatures across a good portion of the northwest there and into the western United States, and in cooler temperatures across the central United States and eastern United States too. Again, quite a good confidence level on both sides. We have 40 to 50% confidence of it being above average across the northwest there, and 40 to 50% of it being cooler. And yes, these aren't based off intensity of cold, it's based off their probabilities, which you could argue, the more intense it is, the more likely it is it's going to be cold, but it's not quite the same thing. The 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook shows wet conditions across a good portion of the United States, which is in line with the activity. And that is a silver lining with this heat, that it seems as there will be still a little bit of precipitation that makes its way into the northwest, so it's not going to completely dry things out. But notice that where it's really going to be cooler, it's also going to be drier across the Great Lakes and a good portion of the Northeast and New England. So now let's take a look at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. So this is a little further out, from the 1st of September through the 7th, and this is both the temperature and precipitation. And notice that at this point the cool air confidence has decreased quite a bit, and that makes sense because, as I mentioned, at this point it looks as if the cool air will be more associated with actual cloud cover and rain activity, which there will be quite a bit of, which is why it will probably still be leaning towards the cool side, but they have low confidence in it. And then the heat kind of starts getting a little bit more expansive, especially across the northern United States, as, again, Canada potentially really heats up. But the confidence is still pretty low, which is a little surprising based on some of those readings those models were showing, which makes me believe that the Climate Prediction Center still believes that it's going back and forth a little too much. But again, the fact that the European and GFS agree, and we have those intra-model agreements from the different runs at the different times of the day, is also a little concerning and makes me a little bit more confident in that occurring. Notice the 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook, very active, so that would include pretty much all of the United States seeing above average conditions. If I were to draw my own map here, I'll probably include more of the central United States in these green colors and not as much dryness, but we'll have to see which one pans out exactly. That is it for today's video, guys. I just wanted to give a quick rundown of the long range to medium range and show you the different possibilities of the pattern as we head into September. Now the first full month of autumn, at least meteorologically, as it starts on the 1st of September, while astronomically it's the 21st of September. So yeah, I'll keep you guys updated, and hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya.